Hi guys, Jamie here from JB Motion. Right now you're watching a video in the background. It's a guy, he's
moving in slow motion.
you can download him from the description below. We're going to import him into Cinema 4D and then we're going to create these rocks that are going to fly at him. He's going to dodge them, hopefully. And we're going to learn exactly how we're going to go about creating this scene in Cinema 4D. Stay tuned, here we go. That was a weak click. I'm going to do it again. Okay, so first of all we want to bring in our character. So I have him here and I'll put a link in the description. You'll be able to download him and bring him straight into your scene, just in case you don't have mixamo. Click OK there, and we do not want to reassign included takes, so I'll click on no. And here's our guy. So if we click play there, he's going to do his thing. We want to make him go in slow motion. So to do that, we're going to increase the frame range to 600 frames and Shift F3 to open up your timeline. Going to hold Alt and my right click to zoom out. I'm going to select the hips object here and I'm going to drag this out to round about frame 600 and close that down, and now our guy is going to go in super slow motion. So there he goes. Okay, cool. So simple as that to set it up in slow motion. So next I'm going to create a physical sky. Our sun, the sun is going to act as the lighting for this scene because it's nice and easy to set up, and it's going to work. It's going to do wonders for us. But we don't want to see the background, so if I render that out, we don't want to see the blue sky here and the grayness. We just want to see we don't want to see anything in the background. We just want the sun's light. So let's add a Cinema 4D tag. Let's add a compositing tag to our sky and go down here to turn off scene by camera. No, we're not going to see that. We're just going to get the light shining down from the sun. We also want to add some reflectance to our character's clothing material because he's looking a bit, I don't know, a bit boring. You'd expect this tight leather to have a bit of a shine to it. So to do that, let's open up the first material here. These are going to come in when you import your character. And go to the reflectance channel. And we are going to add a Beckman. And we're going to bring the brightness down to about 18%. Turn on our interactive render region there. Now you can see he's got some nice specular highlights on his legs. I'm bringing up the quality there. And we're going to do the same for his torso. So this is the torso material. Go into the reflectance channel, add a Beckman and bring the brightness down to 18%. So now he's looking a lot better basically. He's got those cool spec highlights on his costume. So he's looking nice. Turn off the interactive render region. So that's our character. He's looking very well, and now we want to set up a camera that's going to follow him along as he's moving there along the Z axis. So let's create a camera and let's make it active, and we want to go into the coordinates tab and just zero everything out. This should be set to -90 degrees. This one 0 and the next one 0 also. Now let's bring it back along the x-axis, and we want to bring it up along the y and to about there, so that he is centered, so that the camera's kind of focused in on his hips area there. So once we've done that, we want to find the frame at which our character starts to move forward. So that is about here, frame 109. Let's add a keyframe on the z-axis, and let's continue along and find the frame at which he stops moving forward. So that is about there. About there. Yeah, we'll say it's about here. Frame 4. So make the camera active again if it isn't already, and let's drag the camera along the z-axis until it is focused on the center of our character again, and add another keyframe. So let's see what that looks like. So the camera starts moving, but see the ease in is a bit too delayed. So you can see our character takes off, but our camera is still trying to catch up because it's easing in basically. It eases in and it eases out. The ease out doesn't seem to be causing us any issues, but the ease in is. So we want to fix that. Shift F3 to open up your timeline and select your camera. Hit Tab on your keyboard to bring up your F curve, and let's move this out of the way. Select this point here, and let's just move this along. So we want the center point here to be on our character more or less at all times. So we need to fix this ease in. Hover over this little black triangle, hold Control so you can only move it along. You can only move it left and right, not up and down. If you don't hold Control, you'll be able to, it'll go all over the place, up and down, left and right. So just drag this until our camera is back to the center of our character, like that. So let's play that again. So now the ease in, it's less slow, so it's basically keeping up with our character. And I'm happy enough with that. Cool. So our character finishes here. It's not exactly center, so we could fix that it just a little bit. We want to move our camera. So bring the time marker to where our frame is and go to our camera, and let's just bring this forward a little bit to about there. Slight difference just to be perfectionists. And now we can see that our camera is doing a much better job, and when it finishes, our character is more central in the shot. Cool. So that's that. Oh, one more thing as well. I also want to move the camera up along the Y frame when he jumps, or along the Y axis when he jumps, and then back down when he lands on the floor, just for a little bit of extra coolness. So he starts to lift up around here. So I'm going to add a keyframe there on the Y axis. He reaches his highest point about there, let's say. So I'm going to bring the camera up to meet him and add another keyframe on the Y axis, and then he comes back down about there. So I'm going to bring the camera back down to where it was initially, which is 98. I'm just looking here where it was to start off. So he goes up, the camera jumps up a bit too slowly. Let's open up our timeline there. It jumps up a bit too quickly, I should say. So we want to grab this keyframe and move it forward a little bit, because slow that down. And also, actually, it needs to happen sooner. So it needs to start around here. Follows him up. Yeah, that's a bit better. And then it's going to go back down to a value of 98. About there. So when he hits the ground again, our camera's going to go back down to 98 where it was originally, and add a keyframe. So now the camera goes up as he goes up, and it goes down as he goes down. It's very subtle, but just a little bit of extra coolness. Next, so we're happy enough with that. We want to select our character's body and his joints, and just Alt G to put them into a null, and we can call that null character. And we are now going to create our pieces of rock that are going to fly across the screen towards him, that he's going to be dodging with his fanciness. So to do that, I'm just going to hide him away there, just for the time being. We're going to create a sphere. And I'm going to get out of my camera here because I don't want to be moving around in our camera. I could add a protection tag. I might just do that. Just so I won't be able to move the camera around by accident. So let's deactivate that camera there, and we are going to create a sphere, and we're going to add a Voronoi fracture object, and we're going to make the sphere a child of that. I want to turn off the sun here because it's giving me some shadows here that I can't really see what I'm doing. Turn that off. And now you can see that our Voronoi fracture is breaking our sphere up into pieces. So we want to increase the amount of pieces that it's breaking the sphere up into. So in Voronoi fracture, go to Sources and click on the point generator distribution and bring the point amount up to about 130. Hit enter there. So now we got loads of parts, loads of pieces. So it's broken it up into loads of pieces. We also want to now add materials to our object. So we're going to have the stone material on the outside and on the inside faces, which we have yet to add. And to do that, we can go to the Selections tab in our Voronoi fracture, tick this box, and it's going to give us a polygon selection tag for the inside faces. So we're going to use that a little bit later. So first, let's add in our materials, our rock and our soil materials, and they are actually available without us having to create them in Content Browser. To find them, go to Content Browser, go to Presets, Studio, Materials, Sound, and here they are. So let's drag this soil one down to our materials manager there and do the same for the rocks one. Now we can go ahead and add these to our object. So let's drag this rock one up to our Voronoi fracture object, and it's not doing anything because it's colorizing the fragments at the moment, so we want to turn that off. Voronoi fracture object, turn off the colorized fragments. Now you can see it's given us our, if I just render that out, it's given us our rock material, and we want to turn off this jaggedness. So, you know, it's basically the displacement channel is turned on inside the material. So we want to turn that off. We don't need that level of detail for what we're doing. And we want to do the same for the soil. Turn off displacement. So now we can see that we have this rock material on the outside, and we're going to set this to cubic, the projection to cubic. Click on the material tag and set the projection to cubic. You may be wondering why not spherical. It's a sphere. Well, that's true, but it won't be a sphere soon because we're going to break it up and turn it into little fragments. So cubic is going to give us the best results. Okay. Now we're going to add our soil. Well, before we do that, let's break this apart. So to do so, click on the Voronoi fracture object and go to MoGraph, effector, and add a plane effector. So now we want to go to our plane effector, into the parameters tab, and we're going to turn the position Y to set that to 0. And we're going to then add some fall off, create a linear field, click on the fall off tab and click on the linear field button. I just want to bring our character back in for 1 second. Okay, so let's rotate this 90 degrees. Press R on your keyboard, hold down shift after you click, and then that will rotate in increments of 10 degrees. And it's not doing anything because we haven't added any parameter to our plane effector. So let's drag the position of the y-axis out. And now you can see it's breaking up our sphere into fragments. So another thing you'll notice is that our material is sliding on our object. It's not actually stuck to our object. So we're going to fix that later. Don't worry about that for now. And we want to add our soil material to these inside faces. So to do that, we're going to drag our soil material onto our Voronoi fracture, and then we're going to use this selection tag that we created earlier, and we're going to drag it down to the selection field of our soil texture tag and let go there. So now the soil is just going to be applied to our inside faces. The rock is going to be on the outside faces. And we want to make sure that that's set to cubic also. The projection is set to cubic. Now let's see what that looks like. Okay, it's looking pretty good. One thing I'd like to change is the sharpness of the edges here of the inside faces. So to do that, I'm going to turn on my interactive render region first. Then I'm going to go to the Voronoi fracture, go to detailing, the detailing tab, turn on enable detailing, and we can relax the inside edges here, maybe 1.5 on that, maybe even just 1 actually, which is what I typed in by accident, happy accident. That's fine, so we'll leave it at 1. And I'm happy enough with those. Now, we are going to be emitting a few of these objects. Not all of them. So what we want to do is we want to make this editable. But before we do that, we'll just make a duplicate of it, make the original one invisible. And the reason I'm doing this is in case I want to change anything in this Voronoi fracture later. And then with the duplicate, select it and hit C on your keyboard to make it editable. And now it's going to create a null, and inside that null you're going to have each of our fracture parts 1 to 130. If you remember, we set our number of parts to, what did we set? I forgot the actual term. Yeah, we set our point amount to 130. It broke up our sphere to 130 points. So now we have that many fracture parts. And you can select any of them. You can move them around if you want. Now we just want to get about 12 of these. Get 11 or 12 of them. So you can pick the ones you want and delete off the rest, or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to fracture part 13, select it, scroll all the way down and go to fracture part 130. I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to hit delete. That's going to delete all of those fracture parts, and I'm going to be left with fracture part 1 to fracture part 12. So as you can see, our scene is pretty slow when I'm rotating around, and the reason for that is because we still have this in our scene. So I don't think I'm going to need that anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that and anything else I don't need. So now our scene's going to be a lot smoother. Rotating around it is anyway. And now what I want to do is, remember earlier we were saying that if we move this up and down, our texture is sliding, so we want to fix that. So to do that, we're going to have to we're going to have to bring our materials down into each of our objects. Each of our objects are going to have these materials attached to them, so then the materials won't slide. So I'm just going to grab them and I'm going to drag them. And now fracture part 1 has the materials attached to it, so the material now won't slide. So we need to do the same thing for each of those, but before we do that, we need to make sure that our soil is only attached to our inside faces. So select our soil tag and then drag the inside faces selection tag down to the selection. So it looks like it was already done, so that's fine. And then select both of these materials, hold down Control, and just copy these onto each of our 12 fracture parts. There might have been an easier way to do this, I'm not sure. If you have one, please let me know in the comments below. Cool, so that's done. We are now going to add an emitter object to our scene. So let's turn back on our character so that he's not feeling left out, and straight away you can see that these blocks or boulders or whatever you're going to call them are way too big for our guy. Our guy is pretty small, and some of these are going to hit him, and if they were to hit him, he'd be knocked out, so we want to make them a bit smaller. So select the Voronoi fracture null there, and then click on your scale tool and just drag that down to about there, we'll say. Yeah, that looks good. About the size where if one of these fellas actually hit him, he would be hurt, but he wouldn't die. That's the measurement that we're going for. Cool. Now let's add an emitter object, and I want to bring this back along the z axis to about here, we'll say. We'll probably be changing that later. This is just rough for now. And we can bring him in here to our Voronoi fracture null. No reason for that, just so I'm keeping everything organized in the object manager. Select the sphere, fracture part 1, go down to number 12, hold shift so we can select all of them, and then just make these children of the emitter. Now if we go to our emitter and hit play, you'll see all these white lines. Not what we want. We want to see our fracture parts being emitted. So go to the particle tab and click on show objects, and now if we click play, our particles are going to be flying out of our emitter, and this guy he's going to turn his back just before they come in contact with him. That's the effect we want, so that it looks like he's defending his, he's protecting himself by turning his back on the rocks flying towards him. So we want to move the particle emitter back a bit because he is taking a bit longer to turn his back. So let's try here, and let's see how that goes. So he's turning his back, and as you can see, our camera isn't actually following him anymore. That's because we added that protection tag. It's preventing our camera from moving. So when we're good and ready, we'll delete that away, and our camera will be following him again. So he's turning his back about there. Looks like just in the nick of time, which is what we're looking for. Cool. So I'm happy enough with the positioning of the emitter there. He's turning his back, and then the rocks start flying in. So we want to basically, what do we want to do? We want to increase the width and height of the emitter so that our rocks aren't so concentrated, like looking like they're in a big straight line. So to do that, go to the emitter, go to the emitter tab, and increase the size here to about 250 on the X, and we can do this about 300 on the Y. And we want to make sure that it is just above the floor. So middle mouse click, go into your front view and just bring that down so it's just above the floor. The floor being here and it's slightly above it. Cool, okay. So let's see what that looks like now. Okay, cool. That's pretty good. Now what we want to do for our emitter is go into it and go to particle. We're going to increase the birth rate in the editor and the renderer to 15 and 15. We're going to set the stop emission to, let's see, we don't want the emission to stop until he stops dodging stuff. And that is around here. So we'll say 420 is when the emission should stop. And the speed is fine. But let's add a variation of about 50%. Rotation, we want them to be flipping around, you know, twisting and turning as they're flying through the air. So we can add a 180 degrees rotation to that, 100% rotation variation, which will be perfect. And let's hit play there and see what that looks like. Okay, so that's looking way better. And he's going to turn his back. Okay, cool. So let's just have a look at how many rocks he's actually going to be avoiding. So from this view, it looks like he's not going to be avoiding many at all. But from the view that we've set up, let me just delete off this protection tag. From the view that we set up, it looks like he's doing a good enough job of avoiding most of them, which is cool. So next, we want to add a rigid body tag to each of these. So they'll be affected by gravity and they'll be able to collide off of our character and the floor that we have yet to create. So select all of them, right click, go to simulation tag and rigid body. So now our particles, aha, see now I've just moved my camera around because I deleted the protection tag and I've just moved it all around and now it's all going to be messed up. So to undo camera movement, hold down Control and Shift, press Z on your keyboard with Control and Shift held down. And until it gets back to where you had it set up originally. So that's where I had it set up originally. So that's why you need protection tags on your cameras to avoid accidentally moving your camera around. So I'm going to put that protection tag back on there. And I'm going to leave it on there as well until the end of this tutorial. So I've kind of lost my trail. Oh yeah, okay. So we added a rigid body tag. So all these particles are going to fall down now. They're going to be affected by gravity. They're going to act like real pieces of rock. But we want them to look like they're traveling through space at a high velocity in slow motion. So to do that, we're going to turn down the gravity of our scene. Control D on your keyboard to open up the project settings here and go into the Dynamics tab. Let's go to gravity and turn that down to 2. So now if we hit play, you can see that our rocks are flying through space. There's hardly any gravity pulling them down, so it kind of looks like that they've been blasted towards our character with a really high velocity. And that's the effect we're going for. And now that they're all going to be able to collide and react to gravity, we can now add a collider tag to the body of our character and a collider body tag. And now our rocks, if they do come in contact with our guy, they'll bounce off him, or you know, he'll deflect them or whatever. And we're also going to create a floor, and we are going to make sure that our floor is touching the feet of our character. So we can move that up a little bit along the y-axis to about there. Doesn't matter if it's actually going over his feet a little bit. It's better than being under his foot, because then you're going to get some shadows and it's going to look obvious that he's floating. Cool. Okay. So now, next we want to create a texture for our floor. And I'm going to go with a lovely pink as per our introduction video. So set this back to HSV, and I'm going to go for a nice hot pink. And I'm going to add that to the floor there. And let's make our floor, let's add a collider tag to our floor, collider body tag. So now our emitted fracture parts are going to be bouncing off our floor and bouncing off our guy. Let's just have a quick look at what that looking like. So our camera's not following our guy, but I'm not going to delete that protection tag because I don't want to make the same mistake as I did the last time. So what we can also do now is turn on our interactive render region, and we can see what this is looking like. Okay, we need to turn back on our physical sky as well. Okay, so I want to add a background also to our scene, and it's going to share the same material as our floor. And I want it to blend here at the horizon, so add a compositing tag to our floor object and go to this compositing background and tick that box there. And now it's going to be just one seamless floor background. There's going to be no seam there. Cool. So, okay. I know I said I wouldn't do this, but I kind of have to at this stage. We're almost at the end. Deleting off our protection tag, and I'm going to give this a quick playthrough. I'm going to fast forward this so you don't have to watch this playthrough. Okay, so I'm really happy with how this is looking. What I want to do also is I want to turn on ambient occlusion, and I also want to turn on ambient occlusion to give us some nice contact shadows. I want to add anti-aliasing, set that to 2x2. 2x2 should be enough to smoothen out our shadows there. And I'm going to turn on global illumination. So that's going to make the light bounce around our scene. It's going to make it look a lot more realistic. It's going to increase render time, but you know, sacrifices must be made for beauty. And I think that is good to go. So that concludes the tutorial, guys. Go ahead and render that out, 600 frames, and see what you get. Hope you learned a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.